What's going on, y'all? So, Empirical Labs and Softube have announced a partnership that's bringing us the Lil FreQ and the MIke-E channel strip in the plug-in format. I'm a huge fan of Empirical Labs, a huge fan of Softube, and I'm very excited about this, especially the MIke-E because I own a MIke-E, and it's been my go-to channel strip, or one of my go-to channel strips, for recording vocals, especially rap vocals, over the last many years. I use it a lot on my mixes, but last year I took it down to the studio that I work out of so I can track with it, and I've been missing that Empirical Labs compression in my studio, so very happy to now have this in the plug-in format that I can use it on my mixes and leave my MIke-E at the studio. Let's take a closer look at the Lil FreQ as well as the MIke-E channel strip. So if you get the Empirical Labs complete collection, that's going to include the Lil FreQ, the MIke-E, and the track pack. And the track pack is, if you were to buy the MIke-E and the Lil FreQ, the hardware together as a bundle, it's known as the track pack. And the track pack is console 1 ready, of course, for you console 1 users. So we'll start with the Lil FreQ here. I'll go over the controls and then give an example, and then we'll move on to the MIke-E. So a very busy EQ, as you can see here, and the hardware is no different. I mean, they've packed a lot into this EQ. One of the most unique things is that it includes a de-esser. So looking at the left and right, we've got our patented Empirical Labs knobs for your input and output. We've got a high-pass filter here, which is kind of steep. It's at an 18 dB slope, but it goes up to 330 hertz. This DS is your de-esser section. So this button here, you can see on to the left of it is going to tell you the position of the de-esser. So right now it is placed after the shelf or before the EQ, and you can see that down here with this blue dot for de-esser. So let's click this a few times and you can change the position of the de-esser. So right now it is before the EQ. Click it again, that takes it out, and click it again. Now you see it flashing over here. Now the de-esser is placed after the EQ. And you can also click on these DS buttons here to move the de-esser around. You've got your threshold for the de-esser, your frequency for the de-esser, and you have a high frequency limiter, which is different from the de-esser. This high frequency limiter will give it's like a tape effect of softening the high end. Bypass all button here. Going along the bottom, you have a high shelf and a low shelf. So the high shelf is fixed at around 4K, low shelf is fixed at around 120 hertz, and that's at a 6 dB slope. Low frequency, low mid, and high frequency. Now these blue markers you see you can set this to emulate, this is a famous British EQ. I won't say the name just for the fun of it, but last name rhymes with Steve. But you can select those to emulate that. And back to the shelf. So with this being fixed at 4K and being fixed at 120 hertz, if you want to move, say, your high frequency, this 12, 10, 8K, if you want that as a shelf, you can select this cue here as wide as it can go, and it'll kind of act like a shelf for you. And you can individually bypass each section, which is nice. Okay, so let's get into some example here. So I've got this on a hip hop vocal and I've got it bypassed right now, and this is what we have.
We need the bottles with the sparklers, what the models. You see we over here thugging, what's the problem? Ain't been too many things that's going on, except a cup full of this here Patron that's going on, hey.
Okay, so it's a little muddy, it's a little dark, and we got a S problem, especially with their sparkling is just sticking out really bad. So we're going to correct all that here with the Lil FreQ. So let's turn this on. I've got a high pass set at 80 hertz. I have the de-esser on. I've got the high shelf at 3 dB, and I'm cutting, I think right below 200 hertz, a couple dB there. And I'm also boosting a couple dB in the high mids at should be 3.2K. All right, let's take a listen now.
We need the bottles with the sparklers, what the models. You see we over here thugging, what's the problem? Ain't been too many things that's going on, except a cup full of this here Patron that's going on, hey.
And one more time without it.
We need the bottles with the sparklers, what the models.
And with it.
We need the bottles with the sparklers, what the models.
So the de-esser is doing a great job of taming that S and really making the vocal sound smoother. So that's what I've done here with the EQ. Let's move on to the MIke-E. So with the MIke-E, we're going to use that on the hook. Here we go. So let's loop that. Okay, so let's go over the controls of the MIke-E. Again, this is a compressor channel strip that I use a lot on hip-hop vocals. So looking at this and comparing to the hardware, I immediately noticed the differences that we have in extra attack time listed here. So the hardware has 0.9, 8 milliseconds, 20, and 100 milliseconds. And the release times are still the same, but we do have an added 12 millisecond attack time here. So like the hardware, we have warm, and it also has toasty. Added on the plugin, we have hot as well as threshold. That's going to let you know when you go above the threshold. So again, patented Empirical Labs knobs sets your input and output. Well, this knob is going to set your drive. It's going to drive more signal into the compressor, but the signal is going to start below here at the preamp section. So right now it's set to clean, but you can drive more gain by stepping up. And you've got an 80 hertz high pass filter here, as well as phase, and your wet dry here. And your side chain is going to be to select your external side chain here. Okay, so let's play this hook with the MIke-E bypass, and then I'll bring it in and show you what I did, and we'll go over some settings with it.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros. This is the last call.
And this is with the MIke-E.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol.
That's not it. What do we got here? Oh, it's not active. Okay, this is with the MIke-E.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros.
So it's making the vocal sound forward, more aggressive and in your face, which is why I love this compressor on rap vocals. So looking at these meter here on the left, the threshold, warm, hot, toasty, the more you drive the signal, the more harmonic distortion you get, the more you're going to see these light up. Really, for what I like to use it a lot for, just warm is good enough for me. And, oh, I forgot to mention the emphasis. So we have 3 different emphases here, and on the hardware you only have 1. So you have different emphasis, which is going to help the high frequency be affected by the compression here. So right now I've got a 2-to-1 ratio, 8 millisecond attack, 100 millisecond release. I'm going to go to 1-to-1, which is no compression, which is just saturation, and play that.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros.
So the word call is a little strong there. Let's move up to a 4-to-1 ratio and control that with some compression.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros.
All right, now I'm going to increase the gain on the preamp.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros. This is the last call for alcohol.
making it even more aggressive there. Now you see this bad clip light, that's letting you know that you're getting close to clipping. Now, I'll show you what really impresses me about this compressor, the plug-in as well as the hardware, is that even though it's a VCA style compressor, it can do a lot of gain reduction and not sound like it. So I'm going to really drive this. We've been doing about 9 dB of compression here. I'm going to really drive this. We're going to go to 8:1 ratio. I'm going to increase this drive, which is going to give us more compression. And then I'm going to back off just a little on the mix dry here. But listen to how, or yeah, see how much compression we're getting here, but the signal really doesn't sound squashed at all.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros. This is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros.
So you can see we're getting up to 26 dB of compression there, and it's just not sounding squashed at all like most compressors would. So really special thing I find about this compressor. Okay, let's take a listen to the nuke setting now, which is the highest ratio we have here. And you know, those familiar with the distressor, this is the same nuke from the distressor. Not something I really use on vocals. I like to use it on drums though. But let's take a listen to it on this vocal. Very, very steep ratio here.
Hey, this is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros. This is the last call for alcohol. Order up some bottles, then pass them to my dogs. This is the last call for alcohol. Got Henny on the rocks, a couple shots for bros.
Again, we're not getting a bad sound here, even with a really steep ratio like the nuke on this vocal. And, you know, of course, we can take this, the wet dry here, and blend back some of the dry signal, which when I'm using this, a lot of times I'm tracking with a 2:1 or 4:1 ratio, and I like to have this maybe at 6 or 7 just to bring back some of the dry signal in it. But final thoughts on the Lil FreQ as well as the MIke-E. Let's start with the MIke-E. This sounds like the hardware to me. I mean, Softube is one of the best at modeling hardware, and I think that they really nailed this. And soon, you know, maybe a month or so, I will be getting my MIke-E from the studio, bringing it back to my studio, and doing some comparisons to see just how well they modeled the MIke-E. But they did a really good job with this. It sounds like the hardware. I'm happy for the extra features that we have on here, like the 12 millisecond attack time, as well as the additional emphasis circuits here as well. One thing about the hardware, if you click and hold these buttons on the hardware, it'll step backwards, and I see that is not in the plug-in. But I mean, you can easily click backwards as well. But you know, just something that I noticed. The Lil FreQ, switching over to it. I have not used the hardware on this, but again, Softube, very well respected. I'm pretty sure this is spot on with the hardware here. You can pretty much do anything with this EQ. It's a lot to take in at first. It can seem overwhelming to those who are used to using, you know, simpler EQs. But this, along with the recent EQ, they just did the EQ MP as well. Got two very nice parametric EQ options from Softube that's now available. So I have a link in the description for both of these and for the Empirical Labs Complete Collection Pack as well. If you check your email from Plugin Boutique, they have an offer right now. It's an extra 10% off, which I will be taking advantage of. And I think it runs until March 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. So I have a link in the description. You can save an extra 10% if you want to pick these up through Plugin Boutique. All right, any questions, comments, let me know, and I'll catch y'all next time. I want to invite you to check out my podcast, the Faders Up Podcast, where we discuss pro audio and beyond. We discuss everything from recording to gear to the music business. So if you're an audio engineer, songwriter, recording artist, music producer, this podcast is for you. We recently started season 2, and we're going to have a lot of listener questions on this season, as well as some really cool guests that's lined up and giveaways as well. So if you've already subscribed and followed the podcast, thank you. If you haven't, it's available on all platforms, and I encourage you to check it out. Also, rate it and review it and let us know what you think.